Good morning and welcome to the Southeast Conference 55th Annual Meeting Workshop Session number 1. I am Elise Morris and I will be the tech host for this workshop. This workshop session is titled Helping Your Church Become Accessible to All. I have the pleasure of introducing the presenter for this session. Becky Ramage-Tuttle is a proud member of Kirkwood United Church of Christ in Atlanta, Georgia, and serves on the board of the UCC Disabilities Ministries. Please welcome Becky Ramage-Tuttle. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
I know it's early, but this will get your brain going for the day. I'm really happy to be here to talk about accessible to all. It's something near and dear to my heart. I've never belonged to a church that was fully accessible until I joined Kirkwood. And making it accessible was just a really great experience for me, and my husband, he helped with it also. So I'm gonna share my screen. Hopefully I can do this right and put up a PowerPoint. Can you all see that? Hello?
No, we can't see it.
No, we can't.
No. Okay, hold on a second. How about that?
Better.
Sorry about
Yep.
that.
Yes.
I'm still learning my way around Zoom. Well, as we all know, A2A stands for accessible to all. And it's a terminology that's used by the United Church of Christ to refer to congregations that have completed the accessible to all process and thereby made a commitment to be physically and attitudinally, that's most important, welcoming of people with disabilities. You know, you can have all the physical accessibility in your church, but if that attitude is not accessible, then it's all for naught. It's very important. And I like to say that accessible to all actually means everyone is welcome at this church. Oh, hold on a second. So becoming A2A, the first thing you should do is convene a team of people from the church. And it would be preferable to include as many people with different disabilities as you can. That way you get a cross-disability perspective of what people need, because accessibility is different for each individual. So it's good to get that cross-reference. I have a little story about accessibility. My father, we grew up in Chicago, but my family is from Kentucky. And when my father retired, he planned to move back to Kentucky and was selling his house. And my husband and I had come over to their house while they were getting ready to sell it. And my dad said, "Oh, I wish you would buy this house. It's so accessible." And I said, "It's not accessible, Dad. What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you got the Dan Ryan Expressway over here and the 9094 Expressway over here." I said, "Dad, that's not what we're talking about when it comes to accessibility." But that was accessibility to him. So accessibility means a lot of different things to different people. Survey your church and its programs using the Church Accessibility Audit Instrument. This is a really good instrument to use. It gives you ideas and guidelines on what is accessibility. And please stop me if you have a question. I want to, we don't have to wait just till the end for questions. please feel free to jump in at any time.
I have a quick question, actually. Where do we find the church accessibility audit?
Okay, so you go to the UCCDM website.
Okay.
So you want to complete the 828 checklist and then submit the audit and checklist to the United Church of Christ Disabilities Ministries. And I serve on the committee for 828 on the board. So I see all the applications, a group of us see all the applications that come through for 828 designation.
Becky,
Yes.
how many churches in our Southeast Conference have this designation already?
I'm not sure about the Southeast Conference, but I believe overall there's 17 churches.
17?
Mhm.
17. Wow. Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
we have a lot of work to do.
Mhm.
And it's not a hard, can be a hard thing to do. I mean, when you're dealing with older churches and older buildings, it can be quite the lengthy process to become so accessible to people. I was really lucky. I joined KUCC at a time when they were building their own church. And a lot of the accessibility components were already instilled in the building. So I got off pretty easy. The A2A church accessibility audit had several areas that you need to look at, including attitudinal accessibility. That's very important, like I said. Communication, leadership, physical accessibility, of course, ramps and curb cuts and walkways, parking, elevators and lifts, restrooms and water fountain, worship space, and classrooms. I'm going to touch on restrooms. What I have found in my experience, what we did at KUCC was make the bathrooms non-gender specific. And there's 4 of them, and it's really good because now you can, if you need assistance in the bathroom, you can take somebody in with you, and that's really important. It's important to have a governing body and a pastor that endorses becoming A2A. You need to have an inclusion team or committee at your church, and it could just be a group of friends that you've asked to work on this project with you. People that have a sincere desire to see the church become more accessible. You have to notify our association and/or conference that we are working toward designation as accessible to all. You need to include information about disabilities, A2A etiquette and training resources for church staff, ushers, and greeters. This is important because these are people that are dealing with the individuals, with all the individuals in the church, and it's good to have some awareness training for these individuals. You need to know where to find American Sign Language interpreters and what their fee schedule might be. And it's always good. What we've done is reached out to the Atlanta Area School for the Deaf, and we've gotten interns that have to complete hours, so many hours for their certification. And we've used them for our interpreters, and it's worked out well in the past. So that's another resource you can look at. And then once you become accessible to all, you want to advertise your church as being accessible and inclusive. This picture here is something that I put up, a picture of what you should do and what you should not do. And this is a picture of something you should not do. Because we're not all waiting around to be healed. I mean, we're not ashamed of our disability. We embrace it and live our lives accordingly. This is something you should have. This is a paddle on the door for an automatic door. And now they come where you can just wave your hand in front of it and it'll open up the door instead of pressing a button, which might be difficult for some people. The A2A guide is a publication that the board had put together. And it provides background on what accessibility means in areas related to the church. It's a great guide to go through, and it's probably something you want to go through before you do your audit, just to give you some insight and information on what you should be looking for. And you can get that at the website. Okay, so I can tell you about my experience. I was very new to the church when I was asked to take this on. So I put together a team. It was my husband and my pastor, Susanna Davis, because I just didn't know anybody well enough to ask them to do this with me. So it was a small team, but I suggest that your team, if you at your church, be larger than that and more cross disability if possible. But it was a great experience. It was not too hard, really. I mean, we have we have the regular church, which is all accessible, and then we have a church house where the offices are located, and it's in an actual house, a southern house that is accessible for the most part, but had little things that needed to be done, like the thresholds, and the bathroom needed some tweaking. So that's where most of our work happened, was in a church house. Any questions or thoughts at this time?
Do y'all have the automatic doors? And if
No,
so,
we don't.
yeah.
But we have doors that are weighted specifically so that they're easy to open. But I love automatic doors. I mean, every door I would come to in my life would be automatic if it was up to me. Yeah, and I can't tell you how liberating an automatic door is. My condo association just put in automatic doors in our condo complex. And it's such a liberating feeling to be able to open a door and, you know, go right in without struggling to open it. This is my contact.
I'd like to mention,
Yeah.
Becky,
Yes.
I'd like to mention another possible resource for people, just for a statement about accessibility that you put out to the public so that people know how you are accessible and all of that.
Yes, that's
Charis,
important.
Charis Books and More in Atlanta, CHARIS, has had a very long-term commitment to accessibility. And there is a statement on the Charis website, charisbooksandmore.com, or Charis Circle, Charis Books and More, that says how we are accessible and just puts it in a really nice paragraph that I wish was out there for every organization, every church, whatever, and that it would be true for all of us. So anyway, that's just a resource if people want to check that out.
Definitely, I want to check it out. I'd like to see it.
Becky, are these slides
Yeah, I'd love your
available
feedback
on your
on it.
website, or can you make them available to us?
Make available the website?
The web.
To us. Actually, I'd like a copy. So.
Yeah, the slides. I know this is being recorded, but are the slides somewhere to access?
I can, at least, is there a way for me to make these slides available to people?
I am not sure that question may be for Reverend Heather.
Okay, what you can do is email me in the meantime. Here's my email address, and I'd be happy to make these available to you.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
just send it as a document. Why don't we try going to the website and just kind of get a feel for it. Hopefully I can do this right. Why isn't this, let's see.
You got, yeah.
There you go. Now you're getting there.
Okay. This is on the website, how to become A2A.
You don't seem to be sharing that part of your screen.
No?
No.
Yeah, you have to,
So
I think you have to
Probably-
select what to share.
Probably unshare your presentation and then share your screen that you're projecting.
Okay. Sorry.
So is all this information available on the website?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And you can always contact the UCCDM board. I believe the chairperson's email address is on the website. And if you have questions or need advice, you can always do that. We're happy to help out however we can. Because we understand it's a big project to take on, but it's so worth it to include people with disabilities in our church community. And it's something that's been overlooked for a long time, not just in the UCC, but in many churches. I belonged to a church prior to the United Church of Christ, and they remodeled the whole church and never once asked me about accessibility. And that felt really, just really defeating, you
Mhm.
know, that, because I could have given them some pointers that would have made the place so much more accessible and inclusive.
I think sometimes people are afraid to impose or ask that kind of a question, Becky. You know, they don't want to look like they assumed that, you know, that would be something that they should ask you, you know?
Right,
Afraid of that.
right. But, you know, people with disabilities have a wealth of information in them about accessibility, and we're an untapped resource.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, are you saying that if we recognize that a person has a child who's on the autism spectrum or another way limited, it should be up to us to ask that family,
I would.
what would the child need? What could we do?
Yes, take
Okay.
that step forward.
I just want to feel comfortable with that you know, from your standpoint.
I've always been very comfortable with people asking me my viewpoint on accessibility and what is needed. It helps to build a relationship between that child and the church, which is very important. I can't tell you how many churches I've been to that I didn't even felt like I belonged or that I even mattered.
Yeah.
And KUCC is the first church I've ever felt that I mattered, that I had something to contribute to the church family. So.
Well, I think that's good information for all of us too, because if we recognize that in one of our members, we can at least feel comfortable.
Yes. Yes. I think it's becoming an accessible church has a lot to do with comfort, with people feeling comfortable about approaching. It's not an easy thing to do, and you have to have a comfort level with it to some point. And but it's a great way to open up great conversations about disabilities. I mean, the disability community has a long history of advocacy and civil rights actions, and we love to share it. So, you know, we're not tech resource, like I said, so be sure to include people with as many different disabilities as you can on your team. I mean, you'll come out with some great ideas if you do that.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if I can get back to the website. There we go. There we go. Now, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is the UCCDM website.
Mm-hmm.
And it has just an array of resources and information about becoming accessible. Anything that this board does is accessible to all. It's why we exist. Let's see. How to become A2A, of course, we've gone through that already. And this is where you can pull up the accessibility audit and you can complete the A2A checklist. And this is interesting. We've just, we're giving away, not giving away, but yeah, we're giving priorities to people with disabilities who want to attend the General Senate this year. We have scholarships, and if anyone is interested, they should contact us.
When is the General Synod?
I think it's next month. There you go. July 11th through the 18th. So that's about all I have, really. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Okay. Well, thank you for being patient with me and going through this process with me. It's been a great experience becoming accessible to all with this church. And I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It was a lot of work, but it was something that needed to be done. And I know that my pastor was very much invested in this process, and having a pastor that is that invested is very important to the process. You have to have that support and that leadership in this process. Lord.
No, this is B. Fornes with First Congregational in Montgomery.
Yes.
I do have one quick question for you.
Sure.
If you're a small church, and we are a small church, and many of our congregational churches are, as you well know, we're small in number.
Right.
And when you look at our budget, our church budget, and you look at getting back into this and doing what we need to do, and it is time to go back, we're actually not back in church. We were fortunate to get a grant from the UCC. So we've had our church professionally cleaned, and that's what we did. And we were able to buy cleaning supplies and other things that we needed to get us back into the church. But if you're a small church and your budget is small, do you recommend not trying to do all of this at one time, but to get ready?
I think it can be done in stages. You know, I understand. I've been in small churches, and but it doesn't have to be an expensive venture. You know, there's lots of little tricks of the trade that you can do to make your church accessible that doesn't cost a whole lot. And we had to, in our church house, we had thresholds that were pretty high up in the doors, and we bought little threshold ramps that were like $50 each, maybe. I don't even think they were that expensive. And yes, definitely do it in stages. You know, just be sure to keep your team together through the whole process and informed, And be sure to reach out to the Disabilities Ministries Board for assistance and advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other
I would also
questions?
say, I would also say, reaching out to that whole thing of letting people know,
Mhm.
because I think sometimes we make certain things accessible, but then nobody knows it. So the people who suspect that they can't get in, or that they can't hear, or that they can't maneuver in that space or whatever, just, they don't know that they're welcome. They don't know to come. And so
Right.
that kind of outreach to,
It's important.
there's not just a disability community. There's disability communities, there's individuals, there's all
Right.
of that. So it's I think it's which is why I brought up that thing about Karis having that statement, having a statement that says we care about this and ask us, let us know your needs, some way of being sure that people know that however small we are, that we care, and that we
Right.
want you to be present. And if we are not making it real, we want to work with you to make it real.
I think I agree totally. And outreach is very important to get the people into the church to feel wanted and needed in the church. That outreach is very important. I just thought of another resource you all could look at when you're doing this. There's a thing called Centers for Independent Living, and they're across the country. And Montgomery has a really good one. I forget the name of it right now, but they are organizations that are led by people with disabilities, for people with disabilities, and they know a lot about accessibility. So if you run up against a situation that you're not sure how to handle, give the local Center for Independent Living a call and see if they don't have some advice and some assistance for you.
We have a really good one of those in Birmingham, the Disability Rights and Resources.
I'm sorry, what?
We have a really good independent living center in Birmingham called Disability Rights and Resources.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Dan Kessler.
Yeah. Dan's a neighbor. Yeah, and friend. So a question. I wonder if it's great to have the denominational resource broadly.
Mhm.
If it would be great also, though, if those of us who are working on this process in the Southeast Conference could be in some kind of conversation, whether it's, I don't know, Slackline or an email chain or a Facebook group or whatever, just so that as we're kind of working through this process, that we can be, supporting one another and kind of having questions amongst a smaller group where we kind of know each other, or at least, know of each other, would be helpful. So I don't know if that's something that the conference can facilitate, at least making space for in some way or another.
That's
or
a
if
great
other,
idea.
or if other people would be interested. But we don't have to recreate the wheel in terms of what's already available on the UCCDM site, but just being able to kind of be in conversation with each other as we go through this.
That's an excellent idea,
I think
because
so.
you need that support, and because it can be, sometimes it's a little it can get a little tense when you're trying to do this and you're trying to do, some people take on the whole church at one time, and it can be, it can be a little mind-boggling trying to deal with this stuff, but in the end, it's worth it. But to have some support from outside your church is very important. And I think this would be, I think that's a great idea to have maybe a Facebook page where people can go and post questions. And I don't know if that's something the conference can look at, but I'd be happy to help with it as much as possible.
I know that Cookville UCC would love to have that kind of collaboration going on, Jennifer. And what I was just thinking is maybe we could each, I'd like to list the churches that are here, and maybe I can contact you somehow And we can put that group together and make that get started or help that get started. Is that a possibility?
I think so. Did you get my email address down?
I did not. I know you're at Kirkwood, but I don't.
Actually, it's Tuttle, Tuttle, at S as in Sam, ilcga.org. And I'd be happy to support you all as much as I can and maybe get this Facebook page up and running. I'm not a Facebook guru by any means. I use it mostly to post pictures of my dogs. So, but I'd be happy to help out as much as possible. I think it would be an important thing to do.
And especially if we can make it simple so that, it's not like we're putting a ton of extra work on anybody or that it has to be some kind of constant thing. But if we have a place where we can check in as we have questions or hear, if somebody has a great idea for how to make something work in a simple way, and just so where we can find each other along the line in this.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I like that.
Jennifer, you're at Birmingham. What's the name of your church?
Beloved Community Church.
Beloved.
Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, well, at least you want to, I don't know if this is where we need to end or that's all I have really.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah,
Any other
great job.
questions from anyone?
Good job.
Thank you,
Michael,
Becky.
Thank you. I appreciate you all participating in this.
Thank you so much.
Michael,
You're
what's
welcome.
your church name?
Covenant Community in Birmingham.
Community.
And Barbara, I'm First Congregational in Montgomery.
And that's B, right?
Yes.
Add Spirit of the Cross in Huntsville to that list too.
Oh, let me also give you another resource while I'm thinking about it. There's a national organization called National Council on Independent Living. And they have on their, it's in as in Nancy, CIL.org. And on their website, they have a place where you can find your local Center for Independent Living. They have all of them from around the country listed. So that's another great resource. Well, thank you all very much for coming, and I hope I didn't talk too fast. I tend to do that. But I appreciate your patience and your willingness to make your congregations accessible to all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So
Thank you very much.
the conference invites you to join at the next workshop. Will be at 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. And if you have not signed up for a workshop for the second session, I have put in the chat the link to where you can go and sign up. And it's www.secucc.org/links.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you everyone for joining. And